What's going on, YouTube fam? Back at it again. It's your boy, Paul Macetta. Back with you for another live stream. So, today I got something really cool for you guys. And so, first things first, I'm going to give you some goodies, as always, in the description. I put two links in there. The first one, because today we're going to talk about story sourcing, like where to actually come up with stories. And so the reason for this is because what I teach people how to do is, as we know, storytelling is extremely effective when it comes to sales and marketing. This is no secret, right? But what I found is that doing storytelling effectively in 2023 requires more than just the skill set of knowing how to tell a story. You need to be able to tell your story fast, right? In fact, you should be able to tell it in under 60 seconds, right? There's a reason why all the social media platforms are moving toward short form content like Reels, TikTok style videos, shorts, etc. And so if you want to use storytelling effectively in 2023, you need to be able to tell your story fast, because that's just where the world is in a place right now where we have very, very short attention spans, and we're being very, very choosy and particular about the things that we actually give our attention to. And so if you want to do storytelling for your business, and you want to apply it to sales and marketing the right way in 2023, you need to be able to tell your story in 60 seconds or less. And so that's what I teach people in my masterclass, the 60-second story method. I'll put a link to the masterclass in here if you want to check that out. I'm also going to give you a link to a free cheat sheet which outlines my entire framework for telling effective stories in 60 seconds or less. But here's the reason why I'm making today's video. What I found in coaching dozens of online entrepreneurs, experts, coaches, consultants, authors, course creators is, once I show them the framework of how to create the story, usually 9 times out of 10, the first question I'm going to get is, well, where do I come up with stories? Like, what if I don't think I have any stories to tell about my business? Like, where do I actually come up with them? And so that's going to be the topic of today's training, is like where to find stories that sell. Now, interestingly enough, if you enroll in the 60-second story method masterclass, you're going to get the slides that I'm going to go through here as a free bonus. But like I said, nothing for sale on this video. I'm going to give you access to the framework for free. It's in the description. You can go ahead and check that out. As for now, let's dive right in. So, where do you look for your stories? Okay, so let me just move this around. Okay, so there are a few points to be kept in mind when you're looking for potential stories. The first one is that your goals and priorities should be used as filters. So everyday life is going to offer a veritable avalanche of material, so much that you might be inundated with stories. Filters are the handful of things that constitute your focus. It could be targets, strategies, priorities, values, culture, brands, selling points, messages, core strengths. And so, you know, I've been talking about this recently, that you only need 3 things to be an effective communicator: clarity, confidence, and conviction. And this circles back to the clarity thing, meaning whenever you construct any kind of message, if you want to be an effective communicator, well, you need to know beforehand like what the end result of that message is. You need to have a goal. You need to know, like, okay, what exactly is the result that I'm looking to elicit here? Am I looking to create a new perception, a new perspective, a thought, an opinion, a behavior, an emotion? Like, what's the end result here? And so oftentimes what will happen is, once people start to open up their mind to potential stories, they might get overwhelmed and they could start picking things that really sound cool or would make for a great story, but just not in the context of their business. And so anytime I'm going to use a story of any sort in my marketing for my business, I get very clear right from the get as to like what is the goal. What do I want? What's the purpose of me telling this story? Because I have tons of stories that would shock and intrigue and captivate the average person. But I have to always ask myself the question of, okay, but what's the point? Like, how does this fit into the business, right? How does it fit into the sales and marketing? You also want to be alert to any possible opportunities that may occur. So keep the radar up for situations in daily life that might make a good story. Change your routine and say yes to experiences that you're unfamiliar with. Because here's the thing, whenever you do something different or that you're not familiar with, which causes you to leave your comfort zone, oftentimes that's where the gold is in terms of story. Because as I've talked about earlier in other videos, like conflict is the secret sauce of a story. The more conflict there is, the more dramatic the story is, the more interesting the story is. And so anytime you do something new in life, you change up your routine, you do something unfamiliar that you haven't done before, chances are you're going to experience some sort of conflict in the form of discomfort. And that stuff makes for good stories. So if you can't think of anything right now, try doing some new things in life, right? I always circle back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I cite a lot of stories, metaphors, and analogies to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I think it offers so many opportunities for storytelling. And so I have like a repertoire of stories that I use in my sales and marketing that come from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but they come from different time frames within my journey. So if I wanted to tell a story about, let's say, for example, the purpose of the story was to do something new, like exactly like what I'm telling you to do here, right? So when I first started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I never thought I would stick with it. I was like, this is something I'm going to try out. I'm going to get beat up. I'm probably going to hate it, and I'll never continue to do it again. It'll just, I want to try it just for the sake of saying that I tried it, but the reality is I'll probably never stick with it. And nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I've now been training over 10 years, and it's one of the very few things in my life that I am super consistent with, right? And so oftentimes I'll use that, right, as a story. I'll talk about how, like, look, sometimes you don't know what you will be consistent at or what you could be really good at unless you actually try, right? Sometimes it's things that you never thought you would be good at or you would have an interest in. I never played any sort of sports. I have zero athletic ability. And so I came into it with all these preconceived notions that those were the only types of people that did good at jiu-jitsu. My point in telling you this is twofold. Number one is that when you actually try new things that you haven't done before, you will likely encounter discomfort and conflict, and those make for good stories. And secondly, once you do that, you'll have something to draw upon within different stages of that journey, right? And within each stage, there are likely stories that you can tell. Like, for example, now, years later, I also teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to little kids, and so I might draw upon a story in that context, right? If I'm trying to communicate a point about communication, for example. So one of the points that I communicate to people is how when you lead people, you have to have rapport with them. And so in my 8 or so years of teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there have been times in my journey where I've had to stop teaching for one reason or another. Maybe it's because business reasons or personal reasons, whatever it might be. And so when I come back to my class, which is technically my class, usually there's another coach that has already taken over that class. And so even though it's my class and that coach is technically the assistant coach, I'm very strategic about how I bring myself back into the class. I don't just come in and say, hey, look, there's a new sheriff in town. We're going to follow a new regime. I'm the guy running the show here. I don't let my ego take over like a lot of other people would. In fact, I don't even take over the class for probably the first 2 to 3 classes that I'm introduced to. So I will literally spend the first 2 to 3 classes assisting the other coach, because what I want to do is a few things. Number one, I want to get to know those kids without having extra resistance from them, right? Because kids are resistant to change, period. And they're resistant. They're used to a certain coach or the new guy. And so I don't want to magnify that by telling them that I'm the new guy and that I'm the one that they need to be listening to. Instead, what I do is I slowly work my way in. I get to know each of them. I create a little rapport with them. I also am watching to see what do they know, what do they not know, how do they behave in the class, who pays attention, who's more of a troublemaker, all that stuff. And so that by the time the 3rd class comes, I have a way better handle on moving in as the lead instructor without any unnecessary resistance from the kids. So why am I telling you this? Because that's another metaphor, story, analogy that I will use when I teach people, but it's from a different time frame in my jiu-jitsu journey. So sometimes I'll use the story about getting out of my comfort zone and doing something I never did before. That's a story I sourced from the beginning of my journey. Then I might give an analogy or a metaphor or a story about teaching, which is what I just did here. Or I might give another one about an achievement that I got or something like that, right? So it's not just one single story that you get from an experience that you try. It could be multiple stories. Read and explore anything and everything. It might sound a bit far-fetched, but try to explore new topics. Don't restrict yourself. Try business books, trade journals, non-business books like biographies and memoirs, magazines. If you've never read on blogs or new subjects, the options are endless. Just look outside your industry or profession. Again, because every time you expose yourself to something new, you're either going to encounter some sort of conflict or maybe a new idea or a new way of thinking that never occurred to you before that you could then build a story around. You also want to set up and conduct interviews with employees, peers, colleagues, volunteers, customers, shareholders, anyone that might actually be playing a role in your business. You want to interview those people. Some stories come to you and other ones need to be hunted down. And so it's important that you always have your radar up, essentially. So an interview, like employees need to hear and they like to hear about satisfied customers. So interview customers about their experience with your product or service. Draw from personal experiences, as these are some of the best stories you could source. A personal story means you can connect more with the material. It's more authentic. The audience will find the content more relevant and connect better. And then find a system for storing your library of stories. As you collect your stories, you would need a retrieval process for as and when you need them. Ensure you organize them somewhere. There are a lot of free apps you can use for notes, etc. Even a spreadsheet to store, organize, and tag stories. Don't rely too heavily on your brain. Few things are more lamentable than having a brilliant idea and forgetting what it was. You know, some of my best ideas will come to me either in the shower or as I'm dozing off for bed at night. And so I always keep my phone next to me on my night table. And if an idea pops in my head, I'll immediately grab the phone and I'll type it into a Google document. Because I can't tell you how many times an idea has come to me and I'll say to myself, oh, I'll remember it in the morning, and then I never do. And so I'll always pop an idea in there. That's kind of like the first step of the process. Is an idea will come to me, I'll pop it in there. Then I'll think of, how can I build a story around that? Or something interesting might happen, so an event might happen, and then I'll think, okay, how can I tie that event to my business, right? So it's usually one of two things. It's either an idea pops in my head and then I think of how can I build a story around that idea, or something will happen, like an event of some sort will happen, and then I'll think, okay, how can I connect that to an idea within the business to use as a story, for the purposes of sales and marketing. So there are a couple of different types of stories that you can tell in the context of sales and marketing. So we have startup, turning point, and stand for stories. Stories that discuss the startup of an organization or a turning point in an individual's career applied to the launches of new companies, new products, and new careers. Stories that present the mission or core values of a company help new employees and potential customers understand the motivation behind the products and services the company offers. So where do you find these types of stories? So the first thing is interview the founders to find out more about the genesis of the organization. If that's you, then look deep and ask yourself, like, what motivated you to start this business? Or what was the problem that needed to be solved? Or was it a unique experience that led them or you to think in new ways? Stories about how companies survived challenges and transformed into offering completely different products and services are useful to spur on creative problem solving and innovation. And so an example of that would be like a story where maybe like one person, they get involved in a certain type of business because maybe they want to solve one specific type of problem, but then in the process of building that business, what they realize is that they're actually better equipped to solve a different type of problem. And so a real world example of this would be me. So when I first built my online business and I originally shifted from the corporate world where I was first a salesperson and then a sales manager. And then I left my corporate job to become a professional copywriter. And then as my copywriting career took off, I got really busy over a 2-year period. I wrote over 100 sales letters in a 2-year period. And so two things happened in that 2-year period. Number one, I gained a ton of experience and wisdom because not only did I put in the reps of writing copy, but I took it very seriously and I studied everything I ever wanted to learn about influence, persuasion, human nature, human psychology, salesmanship in print, NLP, you name it. And so I gained this vast knowledge in a very short amount of time. The second thing that happened was I got burnt out and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I thought, okay, well, I'd like to shift to teaching people influence, persuasion, communication skills. But I was very clear at that time that I wanted my business to really be built around autonomy, meaning I wanted a business that would give me the lifestyle to do what I want, when I want, the way I want. My kids were very young at the time. I wanted the freedom to take them to school and pick them up, go on school trips with them, go on vacations with them, and have my business kind of run itself in the background. And so because of that, I never did any sort of one-on-one coaching, consulting, mentoring, or anything like that. I just created courses, and the courses are how I educated people. Well, now, fast forward, 12 years later, while I still do create courses, like the majority of the work that I do today is vastly different. In today's day and age, I'm working with people one-on-one. That's like the biggest capacity of work that I do. And actually, I enjoy it more. I believe that I identified my unique ability. My unique ability, even though like I know about sales, I know about marketing, I know about copywriting, those are certainly abilities of mine and abilities that I'm very good and polished in. My unique ability is my ability to actually teach and communicate with people one-on-one or in group settings where I break down a concept for them and answer their questions and then help them better understand it, right? But how that happened for me was I jumped into a coaching group of my own about 2 years ago, And in that group, it was a marketing group. And in that group, I wound up being one of the more experienced people who wound up helping a lot of other people in the group. And I was like, wow, I actually enjoy this. Like this idea of coaching people, which I ran from for years. Wow, this is actually pretty cool. And so my point in telling you that is that where I started in my business led me to something completely different. And oftentimes those are powerful stories that you can tell or that you can source. Turning point stories, where do you find those? Interview inspirational CEOs, managers, and employees to find out what gave them the motivation for the line of work they're in. These stories renew interest and joy in work and help employees understand the value that they contribute, right? So when we talk about storytelling, I talk about it a lot in the context of sales and marketing, but storytelling can be used in all capacities of your business, right? It could also be used to build team culture, and this is an example of that. Stand for stories. Stand for stories are like what your company stands for, right? A tagline or a description isn't enough to communicate your company's core values. A powerful story, one that depicts, shows, not tells, how your company's values and principles influences the behavior of others. Then we have what we do stories. Stories that focus on what an individual does in their daily work brings value to their products and services. These are inspiring to potential business partners, investors, and future customers, right? So just simply telling a story about what you do every day and why you do it and why it fulfills your sense of purpose and mission in life can have a profound impact on other people, especially future customers. So there are different ways to find what we do stories. We could find what we do stories about companies and about individuals. We'll start with individuals. To discover these stories, ask a colleague or yourself these questions. Who has influenced you as a mentor or coach, and why? And what was the most memorable moment of your career? What event, personal or business, has had the most impact on your life? And now, how does it influence your work? And what personal legacy are you looking to leave with your work? And so, like, I could easily answer all of these questions. So for me, there's a guy by the name of Todd Brown, who is what I believe to be the best direct response marketer on the planet. And he is someone that I have studied for the past decade or so. And now I work with him in certain capacities, helping to serve his top level mastermind clients that are all doing $1 million or more in business a year. And I help them create front-end online acquisition, customer acquisition campaigns that get them clients and customers consistently and predictably. And so that's the person. The event was really going to his coaching program and being a part of it that led me to realize that I actually like coaching people myself. And so now my personal legacy that I'm trying to leave with my work is I want to impact as many people as I can to communicate with clarity, confidence, and conviction, but I want to do it in the setting of working with them one-on-one, right? Through coaching, consulting, mentoring, because that's where I feel like I add the most value. Finding what we do stories about companies. To discover these stories, ask influential members of the organization these questions. What can you tell me about the why behind the work that you do? Can you tell me about a customer challenge your organization solved? And is there a moment or an event that encapsulates the importance of the work that the organization does? And so, again, I could answer all three of these questions in the context of helping people with their marketing. So I had a client that came to me to help me with their marketing through Todd's company, and they had a very special supplement. It's a drink that is like a super supplement of sorts. It's a tonic, And it's like apple cider vinegar on steroids. It's got apple cider vinegar, cayenne pepper, ashwagandha, chaga mushroom, lemon peel, orange peel, cinnamon, cloves, ginger. It's got these 9 super ingredients in it. And so when they came to me initially, they said, like, look, we have this thing and it's this super supplement and it does all of these different things. But the problem was they weren't selling it. And so after looking at their ingredients and talking to them and getting to know their mission and their story about why they did this, like, that's the why for me, is like, I see good people that have a good product, that believe in it, that know it can help people, but they're struggling to get it out there, right? They're struggling to get eyeballs on it. And so when I can change that for somebody, right? Like, if I can help change the trajectory of someone's life or business by helping them communicate better, that makes me feel really good. Now, that communication could be one-on-one, right? Like communicating in a sales environment. It could be through public speaking, or it could be through online marketing, right? Salesmanship and print, right? They're all forms of communication. So that's the why behind why I do that, right? So when this customer came to us, their challenge was that they weren't selling any of it. And so the first thing that I asked them to do was, I said, look, instead of trying to be all of these different things, right? Like their supplement helped with immune support, and it helped with focus, and it had digestion assistance, right? It helped you better digest. It also had anti-anxiety properties. And so they were trying to talk about all of these different things. And I said, look, let's pick one thing, and let's talk about that one thing, and let's focus on that thing. And then when we're done with that, we can always focus on the next thing and then the next thing after that. Like, we could create a marketing campaign for each one of those things. And the reason why I told them that is because in the world of marketing, and even in communication, it's always better to be one thing to one specific group of people than to try to be many things to many groups of people. And so once we made that shift, they were able to get sales more consistently. Right? So that's the challenge that they had. And now, right, the moment or event that encapsulates the importance of that is like, now this person now these people that own this company, they can breathe a little bit, right? Because they're putting everything into this company, their blood, sweat, tears, money. But now they can begin to breathe a little bit, knowing that the pieces are all starting to come together, that they have a quality product, they're getting it into the hands of the people that really need it, and as a result, they're making money and they're not struggling as much as they were before. So stories that focus on what an individual does in their daily work brings value to their products and services. Again, these are inspiring to potential business partners, investors, and future customers. So again, what's your personal legacy? Who's influenced you the most? What event or personal business has had the most impact on your life? That's how you do it for individuals. And how you do it for companies is, what's the why behind the work you do? Identify a customer challenge. And is there one single moment that really encapsulates why you do what you do? So look, guys, I hope you got some value out of this short little training that I gave you today. But what you have here is really everything you need to source stories that you can use in your business, in your sales, in your marketing to grow your business. So hope that was valuable for you guys. Like I said, you get all of these slides as a free bonus when you enroll in the 60-second story method masterclass. You'll get all of these, plus a ton of other ones. Like there's ones that will show you, cheat sheets that will show you how to tell inspiring stories, how to use storytelling in sales environments, how to use storytelling for branding, etc. And I also go very deep on a training on how specifically to use it in direct response marketing. But like I said, no pressure. You don't have to enroll in that class. What you can do is click the link in the description and get the free framework cheat sheet, which outlines my 3-step process for telling captivating and intriguing stories that transform prospects into customers in 60 seconds or less. That's it for today. I hope you guys have a good weekend. I will see you on the next